Okay, welcome everyone. Hopefully you have joined the correct meeting here. This is the Organization for Tropical Studies Trop Talk webinar series on African ecology and conservation in South Africa, study abroad program. My name is Brooks Bonner. I am an admissions counselor here at the North American office for the Organization for Tropical Studies. We are based here in Durham, North Carolina on campus at Duke University. But the topic for today is going to be, as I said in the introduction there, our semester program in South Africa, African Ecology and Conservation. The program director for this program is Dr. Laurence Kruger. Yes, it's a great coincidence that his last name is Kruger, just as is the same name as the national park that you'll be spending a lot of time in. So um, Dr. Laurence Kruger is going to give a quick overview of the program. I know there's a lot of information to go over, but we could talk for days about all the cool things that you'll see, all the cool research that you'll do, and all the cool people that you'll meet. But we do want to keep this short and sweet. I do want to go over a quick thing that at the end of the talk, there is going to be an opportunity for each of you, the students that have joined us here today, to ask a question to Dr. Kruger. So I'm going to show you how you can let me know if you do have a question at the very end. So what you're going to do is you're going to go on the window of the talk here, and to the lower right-hand corner of the screen, you are going to see three dots. If you take your cursor over those dots, it's going to say the More menu. If you go ahead and click on that, it's going to bring you a drop-down box, and you will see options there. And the thing you will want to select is Raise Your Flag. Once you raise your flag, it's going to notify me, the host, that you do have a question. And then at the end, I will be able to unmute you. You'll be able to ask your question to the group, and Dr. Kruger will go ahead and answer your question. So there'll also be at the end, there will be I can go over kind of a few of the deadlines, a few of the FAQs that students often ask regarding the application. But without further ado, I want to pass it on over to Laurence, who is going to get us started here. Laurence, can you hear us okay?
Yes, indeed. No worries. Loud and clear.
All right, go for it.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's very early in the morning this end, but it's a pleasure to be with you guys. And Brooks asked me to provide you guys with a bit of perspective on the South Africa program. And I've been thinking of how, why exactly it is that you do what you do. And there's a very interesting paper that came out recently about the extinction of experience and how, as we become more sophisticated in our societies and otherwise, we become more and more divorced from natural areas. And, again, the literature would now suggest that that's exacerbating all the other threats to biodiversity. So the less time we spend in nature, the worse the problem becomes. And that gave me pause for thought about our time on campus and so on. And your lives are becoming more and more pressured on campus. You've got more options to choose from. You've got these incredible, courses on campus. But our job is to get you off campus and try and support your theoretical understanding by some experiential learning in the field. So OTS has been around for 55 odd years in the tropics, but some 14 years in South Africa. And so the focus of this particular talk today will be how we roll back some of those challenges around this extinction of experience and also maximizing the benefit of your guys being in the field. So again, just a bit of history. You guys know that OTS is a third-party study abroad program that partners with Duke in running these programs. We have our headquarters at Duke, but we've run field programs pretty much all around South America, Suriname, Brazil, Costa Rica, Panama, Mexico. But in the early 2000s, there was an interesting shift to sort of a more international space, or even more international space, and we established the course in South Africa. And it was initially funded by the Mellon Foundation to get the ball rolling. And since 2005, we've being a sort of a freestanding institution. Typically, we get around 25 students, 22 from the US and 3 from South Africa. We feel very strongly that it's an important part of your experience in South Africa if you're working with South African students, and also you'd be making a contribution to the local students' experience, and this co-learning space becomes really important. We've run a bunch of ecology courses since 2004, and we're in the middle of our 25th, and we've also run 11 global health courses, as well as 9 formally funded, NSF-funded IRAs programs, but also a whole range of internships, which I'll speak about in a second. Just to give you some sense of what the year looks like in South Africa, we've got the 2 blue bars there, which represent the ecology semesters, running from late January to early May, and another from August to early December. And then in the summer months, we run the global health courses. And the orange bar, it would be what used to be the IRAs. We've sought funding again this year, and we hope to have some paid internships probably next year. But in the meantime, we still support an enormous range of you guys in coming back to South Africa to work on internships and so on, and get further experience in independent research. There are 4 courses, and once you guys dive into the details of the program and reading what's on the website, you can get more details on each. But essentially, there's an ecology program. I beg your pardon, ecology course, which focuses on a range of South African biomes, and from savannas, which is why most people come to South Africa and why most people know about South Africa, but also the fynbos, which is a Mediterranean type ecosystem way down south towards Cape Town, where you'll spend 2 weeks in the field. There's the conservation and management course, which focuses on conservation efforts inside and outside of protected areas. South Africa now has some of the leading, or applies some of the leading philosophies in conservation management. So it's important that you guys get a sense of how we do it so formally inside reserves, but also outside of protected areas, and just how important some of these rural communities, how important their roles are in biodiversity conservation in South Africa. The third course is a kind of a toolbox, anything from how to identify birds, bats, small mammals, plants, how to use a compass, how to use a GPS properly, through to multivariate statistics and everything in between. So the idea is that you guys arrive with enormous range of skills anyway, but we've just got to kind of plug the gaps a little bit, but also make sure that you guys are comfortable in the field, working with a variety of taxa, but also broad ecological theories and conservation biology theories. But probably the most important course would be the 4th course, which is the History Through Culture course, where we use a variety of lenses through which we can look at the changing history of South Africa. So we might use music, we might use literature, and we track the change in South Africa virtually from the evolution of hominids through to the traumatic apartheid years, and now, of course, the post-apartheid period in South Africa. And as we struggle as a new democracy, how we come to grips with, on the one hand, human rights issues, social justice issues. The others would be, the right for development, and how this balances with the need for conservation. And that 4th course, the History and Culture course, provides a socioeconomic context for the other 3. Just to give an example, you can't make decisions about elephant management in South Africa without first understanding the socioeconomic context and, of course, the political context. So all the ecological and conservation biological work that you do, we try and provide you guys with as much broader perspective as possible. One of the key features of the program, aside from making sure that we invite as many interesting and dynamic people to come and teach on the program, whether it be the permanent staff on OTS or visiting academics, is that we travel extensively. And we choose these sites very carefully to aid in the teaching experience. So we travel across a broad range of savanna types, from the first sites, and depending which course you join us on, either Pullen Farm, which lies at the south of the Kruger Park, on some of the oldest landscapes in the world, or Nailsflow. But either way, very wet savannas, or relatively speaking, in a South African context. And we choose a site because it's relatively safe. Nothing's going to eat you, um, despite the image of the very large snake. Um, it's safe for you guys to walk around and come to grips with the basics of savanna ecology. And of course, many of you guys come on these programs because you're interested in the safari aspect and engaging in big game ecology. So we head off to Skukuza, and that's really the epicenter of our course. And we spend the majority of our time in the Kruger Park, but particularly in Skukuza, which is the home base. And the world changes for you there, and because you live in an area with plenty of big game around, elephants, buffaloes, rhinos, the big cats, and so on. When we walk in the field, you need to walk with an armed guard with highly trained um, field rangers, and it's here that we really start getting you guys into the basics of the conservation management of the Kruger Park. Depending on the timing of the program and how we work it out in that semester, we usually head down to the Cape after that. And there are a variety of sites. And I'm just giving an example of some of the sites we may visit. There's a West Coast National Park, where you get to dwell in the Strandveld and also the marine systems. It's a world famous, I guess it's an estuarine system. Well, they call it estuarine system, but it's really a cut-off bay. But incredible diversity of birds and fish and other wildlife, and it's a great place to, again, free of animals that'll eat you. It's a great place to explore on foot and spend time walking in the sand dunes and the vegetation, and of course doing a lot of bird watching and otherwise. Um, if you get down to the Western Cape, you have to study fynbos. It's a truly remarkable vegetation type. It's I don't know if you guys are familiar with the notion of biodiversity hotspots. These are areas that are particularly rich in species, but also high in endemism. In other words, species that are only found in those locations. And the Cedarburg lies in the western realm of the fynbos, and it's home to a vast diversity of plants, birds, small mammals, and a few of the large mammals. But it's also a great landscape to go hiking in. So if any of you guys are passionate outdoor enthusiasts, it's here that people go bouldering and long hikes and swimming in rivers while you're doing your science. So again, we encourage students to get out and walk about and explore the landscapes on foot while it's still safe to do so. We then take you to a very arid part of the world, in the far north of the country. So you essentially drive a full transect, or you travel a full transect from the southwestmost corner of South Africa to the far northeasternmost corner, which borders Zimbabwe and Mozambique. And we could take you to either Mapungubwe or to Punda Maria, but the slides I show you here from Mapungubwe National Park. It's a landscape dominated by baobabs, the world's biggest succulents, and truly remarkable. Great vistas, great place to work. We're particularly interested in the role of elephants in these landscapes as both a positive force in dispersing seeds, keeping some of the landscapes open, but also can have potentially negative impacts in the form of habitat change, the reducing of vegetation structure, but a great classroom. Probably one of the most important portions of your stay in South Africa, though, will be when we visit Zulu Bush Camp, which is it's an education development trust. So it's a community-based program that specializes in running courses for you guys. And it hosts, I think, about 15 different study abroad programs every year, as well as a whole bunch of South African programs. And it's here that you guys will go on homestay with vendor families. And the idea is that these families, usually women, because the men are working in the cities, The women are paid as lecturers to teach you what it is to be a rural African person, the hardest working people in the country. And you'll stay with the families and you will spend time with the children. You'll also be engaging some education outreach. Um, and I think it's important that we give back wherever we go. So it's not a case of just simply extracting experiences and data where we visit, but also it's a matter of you guys making a contribution locally. Um, and there are various ways in which we ask you guys to contribute with your energy and your intellect and your enthusiasm. But again, a truly remarkable part of the world, and I'll tell you more about that when you arrive in South Africa. So as I mentioned, the primary focus of what we do here is to get you into the field. We of course do deal with theory, and we introduce you to the basics of savanna and fynbos ecology, and we deal with marine systems and freshwater systems, and these are all systems that are probably quite unique to you guys. But mostly it's about getting you into the field. You guys, or some of you guys, probably have some experience in doing independent research, and more likely than not, it's been laboratory based. So again, our job is to engage in supporting your learning process, in the basics of science. For those of you who haven't done any ecology before, our job is to support you in come to grips with ecology and then get you into the field. And it starts off slow and sort of bite-sized chunks, introducing you to the basics of field biology and savannas, and then we slowly but surely ramp up the engagement. We invite a range of faculty to come teach with us, and they could be top academics, fire ecologists, big mammal ecologists, whoever, or there could also be conservation practitioners. So on the one hand, you could be dealing with mode 1 teachers, so the people that you'd be familiar with on campus. But we also strongly emphasize the mode 2 learning, the experiential learning. So the image on the bottom there is of Rosie Ndlovu, who is a Sangoma, a shaman, and she's also herbalist, and she grows a very broad diversity of medicinal plants in her nursery, and she's trying to teach youngsters in their communities about medicinal plants. And so it's important for us that you guys spend time with people like Rosie, who have a vast practical knowledge in herbs and otherwise. So in the field, working with a whole bunch of people, and very often, certainly for the first portion of the course, we try align our research initiatives with local needs. So it would be the Kruger Park's research directives or the visiting faculty that come and join us. But typically students, when they get towards the end of the program, you guys have to focus on your capstone projects, where after we've trained you guys up a little bit and shared some of our experiences in doing independent research, the field is wide open for you guys to take a crack at doing some independent research. So we just encourage you guys to take a crack at something unique, but also make a contribution locally. As I mentioned, when you guys get to Kruger Park, you'll be engaging with conservation services and coming to grips with some of these philosophies, the world of strategic adaptive management, and I'll tell you all about that when you get there, but the management of elephant numbers, fire ecology, and the removal of alien plants. But then also outside, thinking about conservation outside of protected areas, and thinking about the broader context for conservation and balancing developmental needs with conservation practices, and always considering people as being part of the environment, and consequently you must always include people in your decision making process. Okay, so that's the nuts and bolts of what it is that we do, but I thought I'd just give you just a very brief overview of the kind of work that we do. So I personally am a botanist, although I do all kinds of work on elephants and bats and birds and small mammals. But big tree research forms a quite an important part of our work. Being resource hotspots and keystone species in the landscape, their presence is fundamentally important for birds and bats and otherwise. So one of the key questions is understanding the relationship between vegetation and resident faunal communities. The problem, though, is because we're burning intensely and because elephants have very healthy appetites, we are certainly losing large trees in the landscape, and we need to understand the consequences of those losses for management. So that's that's a key thrust of our research. As I mentioned, we're trying to understand the relationship between vegetation structure and faunal communities. So if you're a natural historian or even harbor a deep-seated delight in small mammals, these are the kind of projects for you. So we engage in extensive biodiversity surveys. You guys get your hands dirty catching reptiles, small mammals, dung beetles. If it moves, we catch it, we take a picture of it, we tag it if need be, and release it again. Of course, analyze the data extensively. Just to give you some sense, some of the more famous work that's come out of the States, MacArthur and Wilson, Martin Cody, have created these or established the links between vegetation and birds, and we're finding the same patterns here in the Kruger Park. But more of that when you get to South Africa. We engage with a range of tame veterinary scientists, and we focus a lot of our work on parasitology, so disease ecology, and thinking about disease from a sort of a One Health perspective. One of my colleagues is also very interested in the use of bees in controlling elephant movement. We do a lot of work outside the reserves, looking at people's perceptions of conservation areas. We do a lot of work down in the Cape in rocky intertidal systems. So we finally bought some wetsuits, so you guys will stay a little bit warmer. But we used to toss you guys in without wetsuits, but now times have changed. The water's chilly, and so you spend 3 or 4 days in the rock pools diving for a variety of intertidal species. We do a lot of freshwater ecology. We're interested in the impact of invasive species. In this case, we were interested in the impact of your largemouth bass in our South African systems. And we also look at riverine health. So if you have an environmental bent, this is the kind of work for you. And then one of my personal favorites would be much like birds follow large ungulates during the day, we would suggest that bats follow elephants at night. So we've got this great ongoing project where we follow elephants at night with a bat meter, and invariably you stumble across leopards and lions and all kinds of other. But the idea is that you guys get to experience an understanding of mutualisms between birds and bats and elephants. And it's also just a great experience to be out at night. So that really gives you some sense of the kind of work that you do. But I also just want to mention one last thing in that we really do encourage you guys to think about senior theses and stick around the course afterwards. And we've now supported fully the third of the students that have been on OTS from the US. So that's about 140 odd students now that have come back to South Africa to do research internships. We've supported graduate students. We've run a range of workshops where we have OTS alumni join us, and a range of science review workshops. So it's not just coming on the course, but there are also enormous range of opportunities for you to stick around afterwards or come back to South Africa. So the underlying intent is definitely to have you guys find a new home in South Africa and make a fundamental contribution one way or the other. We are in very privileged positions being on campus, and an underlying intent for me is to share that privilege. Being a white South African, that's a critical feature of the way I engage with the world, and it's also a way that OTS students in the past have been very interested in engaging, in the sense that they're keen to leave something behind and make a contribution. So I hope to see you guys on the OTS South Africa program. And if you do come, make sure that you keep in the back of your mind that there are opportunities for you to continue on in South Africa. So I think that, in a nutshell, is the South Africa program. So if you have any questions, I am perfectly happy to answer them. Thank you
Yes,
very much for your time.
great. Thank you, Laurence. So as we said at the beginning, if you do have a question, you're going to take your cursor to the right bottom right hand corner of your window there. Click the three dots there. That's the More menu, and select Raise Your Flag in that drop down list, and I can unmute you to ask your question. I recognize a few of the names here of the students that are participating today. But those of you that haven't completed your applications or still kind of debating what you're going to do, The application deadline is April 1st. Um, you do want to make sure that you do have at least 2 semesters of college level biology or related coursework, as well as a minimum 2.7 GPA and good standing with your home institution. Um, there are OTS scholarships available for certain students that do qualify. So you can email me directly or undergraduate at tropicalstudies.org for more specific questions on scholarships. Um, but we're going to go ahead and let someone be the first one. I know we got some questions out there. Go ahead and raise your flag. It's your last opportunity to do so. Um, we don't want to have woken up Laurence at 3 a.m. for nothing. Oh, well, Laurence, maybe I'll ask a question then. If I'll get the ball rolling. Um,
Sure.
what would you say is probably the biggest challenge that students encounter when going on this type of program, or what's an obstacle that is common that you see that students encounter?
Going home again. No, no. I think it's just very unfamiliar. You know, it's definitely it's a fundamental shift from the US, and I think the vast majority of students enjoy that change. But if I had to highlight one issue, it's just those first couple of days where, you know, you your lectures, you know, have these strange accents, and they're speaking about systems you've never heard of, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. But we certainly pay close attention to making sure that students feel comfortable as they land, and make sure that they land softly. And um, but I think that's usually the biggest issue. I guess another is the fact that we're out of communication, you know, out of internet areas for chunks of the time. So on a technical level, that can be quite challenging. But actually, I think it's a real opportunity in the sense that obviously, if you need the internet, it will drive you to get there and so on. But um, it's a great opportunity to unplug and be present and be local and really breathe in the place. So
Great.
I think those are the two biggest challenges.
Okay. Now, you mentioned early on in the talk about there being about 22 US based students, and then you usually have 3 students from South Africa. Can you talk a little bit more about what that dynamic brings to the program, adding students from South African universities as well?
Sure, yeah. You know, in South Africa, we're a lot more focused earlier in the academic career. So our South African students typically have a bit more experience in Savannah ecology and so on. So they bring that to the table and they offer those sets of skills. Whereas you guys in the States have a much broader um, baseline to work from, and so you guys often have a far broader worldview. And I think the combination of the two is a very powerful place. And then I think so you guys learn from each other. Of course, we learn from you as well. Um, but I think the interaction is also very important in the sense that you guys have the benefit of having South Africans on the program, and they've, you know, firsthand experience with the places that you visit and the things that you be doing. So great to have local guides. But the flip side is that you guys actually do a lot of good for the young South Africans as well, in the sense that um, you bring a new worldview, or so you bring a new set of aspirations to bear. And I think that's many of our students speak about that as being or our South African students speak about that being a highlight of their experience. It's broadening their horizons. So I think it's a great opportunity for both. And it also just makes it a far more interesting program. You know, the cultural diversity is important. Um, it just makes it expands your horizons and gets you out of your comfort zones a little bit, which I think is a very important thing. And of course, you know, you guys travel to South Africa to meet South Africans, um, not only for the national parks and otherwise. So it's a great way for you to make local friends and come back and stay for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Thanks for, I mean, that insight is great to have. It's I think anytime you're dealing with a program like this, it's important to you know have students bring different perspectives. And so I think having students from South Africa is an important aspect of the program. So it looks like we got a bunch of shy students tonight. That's quite all right. Um, I'm sure Laurence is happy to go to bed here, but I do want to thank everyone that has joined us here. If you do have any questions, you can always follow up with myself. You can email the enrollment management department here at the NAO office in Durham, North Carolina. You can email us at undergraduate@tropicalstudies.org. You can also email myself, brooks.bonner@tropicalstudies.org. Even if you have a specific question for Laurence as well, I'll be happy to forward that on to him. But
Yeah, feel free to contact me as well. Very happy to engage in questions.
great. Thanks, Laurence. Appreciate everyone to joining us, and everyone have a good night.
Thank you very much, all. Really appreciate it.
Bye bye.